Blood trickled down Marcus Jackson's knuckles as he stared at the three unconscious white men sprawled across his driveway. His wife Tanya sobbed behind him. The neighborhood watched in silence. The police sirens wailed closer. This wasn't just about an HOA violation anymore. Before I dive into this unbelievable story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever felt targeted in your own neighborhood. Ever wondered what happens when trained military precision meets racist intimidation? Let's find out as we uncover how a peaceful family became targets in their own community. Marcus Jackson stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie with practiced precision, the same meticulous attention to detail he had applied during his 15 years as a Navy SEAL. At 39, his athletic 6'2" frame remained as imposing as when he had led tactical teams in combat, though nowadays he channeled that discipline into his security consulting business. The scar that ran along his right forearm served as a permanent reminder of his final deployment, a mission that had earned him both a Purple Heart and the decision to prioritize family over continued service. Downstairs, his wife Tanya prepared breakfast, humming softly as she moved efficiently around their kitchen. At 37, Tanya had built her own impressive career as an elementary school teacher, beloved by her students for her creativity and dedication. Her warm brown eyes and radiant smile had captivated Marcus from their first meeting 12 years ago, and her unwavering support had been his anchor through the darkest periods of his military career. Together they represented achievement, discipline, and the American dream realized. Their colonial-style home in Palmetto Shores, an upscale gated community in coastal Florida, stood as testament to their hard work. The property featured immaculate landscaping with Tanya's prized garden of hibiscus, bird of paradise, and fragrant jasmine, creating a vibrant welcome. Inside the spacious four-bedroom house blended Marcus's preference for minimalist functionality with Tanya's warmer aesthetic touches. The neighborhood boasted excellent schools, manicured common areas, private beach access, and property values that consistently appreciated. For the Jacksons, it represented the culmination of years of sacrifice and planning. Yet beneath the polished veneer of acceptance, subtle currents of tension had flowed since they had moved in 6 months ago. The Jacksons were the only black family in a sea of overwhelmingly white faces. Marcus noticed how conversations seemed to halt when he approached groups of neighbors at community events. Tanya had grown accustomed to the tight smiles of women who declined her offers to host book club meetings. Invitations to neighborhood gatherings mysteriously failed to arrive. People crossed the street rather than walk past their home. Children were suddenly called inside when Jamal, their 16-year-old son, ventured outside. While never explicit, the message was clear: they were tolerated, not welcomed. Their son Jamal entered the kitchen, his lanky frame betraying his recent growth spurt, school backpack slung casually over one shoulder. At 16, he showed all the signs of following in his father's disciplined footsteps, though his battlefield was academic rather than military. His passion for engineering and robotics had already attracted attention from college recruiters, though his experiences at the local high school had been more mixed. Just yesterday, he had quietly mentioned a group project where partners mysteriously preferred to work alone rather than with him despite his top grades. Marcus had recognized the familiar pattern but had emphasized excellence as the best response. Now, as they sat eating breakfast together, Marcus mentioned his upcoming business trip. "I'll be in Washington for 3 days, back Friday evening. Standard security consultation for a new embassy installation." Tanya nodded while refilling coffee cups. "I'll hold down the fort. The garden club is meeting tomorrow, though I doubt they'll accept my application." Her attempt at humor barely masked the hurt beneath. Marcus's phone pinged with an email notification. Tanya's followed seconds later. "Neighborhood standards violation," Tanya read aloud, her forehead creasing. "We've received reports of multiple code violations requiring immediate attention. An inspection team will evaluate your property within 24 hours. Failure to comply may result in fines." Marcus scrolled through the message, scowling. "Probably spam. Our property is immaculate. Besides, official HOA communications come through their management portal, not random emails." He deleted the message and kissed Tanya goodbye. "I'll call when I land." As Marcus backed his SUV out of the driveway, he noticed an unfamiliar black sedan with tinted windows parked 2 houses down. The car's occupants seemed to be watching their home with unusual interest. Marcus made a mental note of the license plate, a security habit never fully abandoned. The sense of unease followed him all the way to the airport, an instinct that had saved his life more than once during his military career, now whispering that something wasn't right in the idyllic neighborhood they called home. The fifth-grade classroom erupted in excited chatter as Tanya Jackson announced the science project partners, her smile genuine, despite the nagging worry that had followed her throughout the morning. Teaching had always been her sanctuary, a place where her competence and passion transcended any preconceptions about her race. The children at least saw only Miss Senator Iwos Jackson, the teacher who turned fractions into games and history into adventures. Her phone vibrated again in her desk drawer, the third text in 2 hours, all with the same cryptic message. Urgent home matters require immediate attention. Property at risk. Tanya tried calling Marcus during her lunch break, but his flight was still in the air. With growing concern, she approached the principal about leaving early. Family emergency, she explained vaguely, and was relieved when Mrs. Winters nodded sympathetically. Your substitute plans are always impeccable, Tanya. Go handle whatever at Island. The 20-minute drive home felt interminable, her imagination conjuring scenarios from burst pipes to break-ins. What she found instead was 3 white men in matching navy blue uniforms, standing on her front porch, an unmarked van parked in her driveway. The tallest man, clearly the leader, had thinning blonde hair and a ruddy complexion. A patch on his chest read HOA enforcement. Tanya approached cautiously, teacher instincts noting details automatically. The leader's stance was aggressive, rather than professional. His 2 companions positioned to block any path around them. None wore official identification badges, just the questionable uniform patches. Mrs. Jackson Calvin Weber, HOA Enforcement Division. We've received multiple complaints about this property. His voice carried no warmth, his eyes cold as they evaluated her. These are my colleagues Rick Dawson and Tom Miller. The men nodded curtly. Tanya maintained her professional demeanor despite the immediate discomfort. I wasn't aware the HOA had an enforcement division. May I see your credentials and the specific violations you're referring to? Weber's expression hardened. The violations are numerous and severe. Unauthorized landscape modifications, improper waste disposal, unapproved exterior paint color, security cameras, exceeding permitted surveillance zones. He gestured toward Tanya's prized flower beds. Those plants are non-native species, strictly prohibited in Section 8.4 of the Covenant. Tanya knew this was false. She had meticulously researched permitted plants before planting. I have copies of all approved modifications and plantings. Let me contact the HOA president to clarify this misunderstanding. As she reached for her phone, Weber stepped forward, invading her personal space. We need immediate access to document these violations. Refusal to comply will result in accelerated fines and potential eviction proceedings. His breath smelled of cigarettes as he leaned closer. You people always think the rules don't apply to you. The racial undertone was unmistakable. Tanya stepped back, raising her phone. I'm recording this interaction. Please provide proper documentation or leave my property immediately. What happened next occurred with shocking speed. Weber's hand struck out, slapping Tanya hard across the face. The force knocked her phone flying and sent her stumbling backward. She lost her balance on the porch steps, falling painfully onto her back, her head hitting the concrete with a sickening thud. Through watering eyes, she saw neighbors across the street watching from windows and porches. No one approached to help. Obstruction added to the violations, Weber announced loudly, as if performing for the audience of neighbors. He nodded to his companions. Complete the inspection. The men pushed past her into the unlocked house. Dazed and throbbing with pain, Tanya managed to retrieve her phone from the bushes where it had landed. The screen was cracked but functional. She stumbled to her feet, feeling blood trickling from where her head had struck the concrete. Inside, the men were systematically photographing every room, placing bright orange violation stickers on walls, furniture, and appliances. When Tanya demanded they leave, Weber simply laughed. Should have thought about consequences before buying in a neighborhood too good for you. The inspection continued for 20 humiliating minutes. They opened closets, examined personal belongings, took photos of family pictures, and made derogatory comments about ghetto decorations when passing African artwork Marcus had collected during deployments. Before leaving, Weber slapped a document on the kitchen counter. $5,000 in immediate fines, due within 48 hours. Failure to comply will trigger eviction proceedings and property liens. He leaned close to Tanya's face. Or you could just save everyone the trouble and sell. I know buyers who'd take this place off your hands. Cash deal, quick closing. The men finally departed, leaving Tanya shaking in her violated home. Only then did she allow herself to cry, fingers trembling as she called Marcus, praying his plane had landed. When he answered and she described what had happened, sending photos of her bruised face and the orange violation stickers defacing their home, his voice became dangerously quiet. I'm coming home. Lock the doors. Call no one. Touch nothing until I get there. The controlled fury in his words told Tanya that Calvin Weber had just made the worst mistake of his life. Marcus Jackson gripped his phone so tightly the case creaked in protest as he stared at the image of his wife's bruised face. The terminal around him faded into white noise as combat instincts long held in check surged through his system. How could anyone put their hands on Tanya, sweet, brilliant Tanya, who spent extra hours helping struggling students, who baked cookies for elderly neighbors, who had waded through 3 combat deployments without a single complaint? I'm booking the next flight home, he told her already, pulling up the airline app with his free hand. Have you called the police? Tanya's voice trembled through the speaker. They said, without proof, the men were impersonating officials. It's a civil HOA dispute. They suggested filing a complaint with the Homeowners Association. Marcus swore under his breath. 20 minutes later, he had secured a seat on a flight departing in 1 hour. During the wait and subsequent 3-hour journey back to Florida, Marcus's mind operated with tactical precision. First, he researched HOA Enforcement Division and found nothing legitimate. Second, he called 4 neighbors whose numbers he had collected during community events. All 4 claimed to be unavailable to check on Tanya. Third, he contacted the actual HOA management company, who confirmed they employed no enforcement officers and sent no inspection teams without prior written notice. Fourth, he called his former SEAL teammate Michael Rivera, now working in private security in Miami, requesting urgent background checks on Calvin Weber, Rick Dawson, and Tom Miller. Finally, he called Jamal, instructing him to go directly to his aunt's house after school rather than come home. By the time his plane touched down, Marcus had transitioned fully into operational mode, his military training providing a framework for what was clearly not a simple neighborhood dispute but a targeted attack. The Uber ride from the airport to Palmetto Shores felt interminable. Marcus found Tanya sitting at the kitchen island, an ice pack pressed to her temple, her normally confident posture collapsed inward. Jamal paced nearby, teenage hands clenched into ineffectual fists, rage and helplessness battling on his young face. I should have been here, the boy said immediately. I could have stopped them. Marcus placed a steady hand on his son's shoulder. This isn't on you. Tell me exactly what happened when you got home. Jamal described arriving to find the house covered in violation stickers and his mother disoriented and injured. The neighbors just watched Dad. Mrs. Wilson was watering her lawn and literally turned her back when I asked if she'd seen anything. Marcus nodded, anger burning cold rather than hot, more dangerous for its control. I need to check something. Both of you stay here. He conducted a methodical sweep of the house, years of counterintelligence training guiding his movements. In his home office, he discovered the first hidden camera behind a bookshelf, a small wireless unit professionally installed. 2 more cameras appeared in the master bedroom, one in the kitchen and another in Jamal's room. His security system, which should have recorded the entire incident, had been disabled, but the backup cloud storage held footage of the 3 men arriving the confrontation and their deliberate search patterns inside. The men hadn't moved like code inspectors looking for violations. They moved like people searching for something specific, particularly in his office where confidential client information was stored. Marcus downloaded the footage to his secure laptop and then gathered his family in the living room, careful to stay away from the newly discovered cameras. We're not staying here tonight, he announced quietly. Pack essentials only. We'll go to the Marriott downtown. Once settled in the hotel room, Marcus finally allowed himself to fully embrace Tanya, carefully avoiding her injuries. "I'm so sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I should never have left." Tanya shook her head against his chest. "You couldn't have known." But Marcus felt the professional failing keenly. His entire career had been built on threat assessment and prevention. Now his family had been attacked in their own home while he was absent. After ensuring Tanya and Jamal were resting, Marcus set up an impromptu command center on the hotel desk. Michael had come through with preliminary information on their attackers. All three men were former private security contractors with military backgrounds, significantly less distinguished than Marcus's own. Weber had been discharged from the Army under questionable circumstances after allegations of excessive force against civilians during a deployment to Afghanistan. All three had criminal records, cleverly hidden behind expungements and sealed files that wouldn't appear in standard background checks. At midnight, Marcus's phone rang with an unlisted number. "Jackson," he answered curtly. A distorted voice responded, "You're digging into things that don't concern you. Smart man would cut his losses. Take your family somewhere they belong before something unfortunate happens." The call disconnected before Marcus could respond. He immediately contacted the hotel front desk to strengthen security protocols for their room and began planning his next moves. What would you do if strangers invaded your home and assaulted your family? Comment number 1, if you'd call the police immediately, or number 2, if you'd handle it yourself like Marcus is preparing to do. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more true stories of justice against racism. Now the question becomes, how far will Marcus go to protect his family and expose the truth? Is he dealing with simple neighborhood racism, or something far more sinister? Let's continue to part 5. The following morning, Marcus rose before dawn, the 4 hours of sleep sufficient for a man trained to function on much less during combat operations. The hotel room was quiet, except for the soft breathing of Tanya and Jamal. He showered quickly, dressed in nondescript clothing, and left a note, explaining he was gathering information. By 6:30, Marcus was parked 2 blocks from his home in a rental car, with tinted windows watching as the neighborhood stirred to life. His military contacts had yielded results overnight. Calvin Weber had transitioned from disgraced Army officer to private military contractor before being dismissed for client relations issues in diplomatic speak. Translation: excessive violence. Rick Dawson had a background in real estate fraud, with 2 sealed indictments. Tom Miller was a former police officer who had resigned before an internal affairs investigation concluded. All 3 now worked for a security company called Community Standards Protection, which had no website, no listed phone number, and an address that turned out to be a mail drop in Tampa. Marcus spent the morning conducting discreet surveillance, noting which neighbors interacted who avoided eye contact when passing his home, and which vehicles lingered too long near his property. By noon, he had identified 3 other homes that appeared vacant despite being recently occupied. All had belonged to minority families. The Garcia family, whose son had played basketball with Jamal. The Patels, whose daughter sold the best Girl Scout cookies in the neighborhood. The Wongs, whose elaborate Christmas decorations had won community awards last December. All gone within the past 3 months. Using his laptop, Marcus conducted deeper research from a local coffee shop. Property records showed all 3 homes had been sold significantly below market value in rapid transactions. More concerning, all had been purchased by different limited liability companies that, when traced through multiple shells, connected to a single corporation, Palmetto Restoration Initiative, LLC. The corporate records listed Richard Harrington as CEO, a name Marcus recognized from community bulletin boards as a major developer in 3 counties. A coincidence seemed increasingly unlikely. Marcus made 2 more calls. First, to a real estate attorney who had handled their home purchase, requesting urgent research into the Palmetto Restoration Initiative. Second, to Sophia Chen, an investigative journalist he had once helped with a story on private military contractors. By mid-afternoon, Marcus had discovered 7 more cases across 3 adjacent counties with identical patterns. Minority homeowners reported harassment from fake HOA representatives, followed by escalating fines, property damage, and eventual below-market sales to shell companies. None had fought back as effectively as the Jacksons were prepared to do. As evening approached, Marcus received a text message from his neighbor Walter Davidson, inviting him to clear the air over the recent misunderstanding. The invitation mentioned a community meeting at the clubhouse that night to discuss neighborhood standards and property values. Marcus recognized the opportunity immediately. Too risky to attend openly, but perfect for reconnaissance. He contacted a former teammate now working for a catering company, arranging to substitute as waitstaff for the event. By 8 o'clock, Marcus was circulating with a tray of appetizers, a catering uniform and subtle appearance adjustments, rendering him nearly unrecognizable to casual acquaintances. The clubhouse filled with familiar faces. Neighbors who had avoided eye contact for months chatted comfortably among themselves. Local business owners Marcus recognized mingled with community leaders. Then the room quieted as Richard Harrington took the central position. Tall, expensively dressed with the confident bearing of old money, Harrington surveyed the room with proprietary satisfaction. Friends and investors, our Palmetto Shores restoration initiative continues to exceed projections. Phase 1 property acquisitions are 87% complete. A projector displayed a map of the community with certain properties highlighted in red. Marcus recognized his home among them. Our community purification strategy has accelerated the transition timeline. Thanks to Mr. Weber's team, problem residents are reconsidering their commitment to the neighborhood. Appreciative laughter rippled through the room. Harrington continued. Once the remaining marked properties are acquired, we'll begin transitioning this entire section to the luxury resort and marina complex. Existing homeowners who've supported our initiative will receive preferred investment opportunities and significant property value increases. County Commissioner Walter Simmons stepped forward next. All necessary permits are proceeding on schedule. Environmental impact exemptions have been granted. The coastal variance approvals will be finalized next month. He paused, smiling broadly. My office remains committed to protecting our community standards and property values from disruptive elements. Marcus maintained his server's demeanor while recording the entire presentation on a hidden device. When Weber approached the front, Marcus carefully adjusted his posture and movements to avoid recognition. Weber detailed his community standards enforcement strategy with disturbing frankness. Targeted application of pressure works 90% of the time. Most problem residents lack resources for extended resistance. The Jackson property is proving more challenging, but we've escalated measures accordingly. They'll break soon enough. Harrington nodded approvingly. The retired military husband complicates things, but everyone has vulnerabilities. Focus on the wife and son. The seal will fold when his family is threatened consistently enough. The casual racism and calculated intimidation tactics continued for another hour. Marcus learned that the entire restoration initiative involved forcing out minority homeowners to create a segregated luxury development with triple the current property values. Neighbors he had greeted at community mailboxes were actively participating in the scheme, receiving kickbacks and investment opportunities in exchange for supporting the harassment campaign. As the meeting concluded, Marcus nearly escaped undetected until Weber suddenly paused, scanning the room with narrowed eyes. Something familiar about that server, he muttered to Dawson. Marcus immediately created a minor distraction by deliberately dropping an empty tray in the kitchen area, using the momentary confusion to slip out through the service entrance. He was halfway to his vehicle when he heard Weber's voice behind him. "Hey, you stop right there." Marcus increased his pace without running, turning a corner and using parked cars as concealment before doubling back through a neighbor's yard. Weber and Dawson searched the parking area with flashlights, as Marcus observed from shadow gathering additional intelligence on their movements and coordination patterns. Only when they gave up and returned inside did Marcus retrieve his rental car and drive circuitously back to the hotel, employing counter-surveillance techniques to ensure he wasn't followed. The recorded evidence was damning. Explicit admissions of targeted harassment based on race. Corrupt officials facilitating illegal development plans. Conspiracy to intimidate homeowners. Fraudulent impersonation of authorities. The scope extended far beyond simple discrimination into organized criminal activity. As Marcus played portions of the recording for Tanya and Jamal, their expressions shifted from shock to resolve. "We're not running," Tanya said firmly, despite the lingering bruise on her face. "This is our home. They don't get to take it." Jamal nodded in fierce agreement. "We fight back." Marcus felt simultaneous pride in their courage and fear for their safety. The opponent was more extensive, better connected, and more dangerous than he had initially assessed. This wasn't just about standing their ground. It was about dismantling a criminal enterprise that had corrupted an entire community, and they had just become its primary targets. The Jacksons awoke to an urgent call from the hotel's front desk. Someone had attempted to access their room overnight, but had been deterred by the enhanced security measures Marcus had requested. After ensuring Tanya and Jamal would remain at the hotel with additional protection from two of Marcus's former military colleagues, he returned alone to their home to assess the situation. The front door stood slightly ajar, though Marcus was certain he had secured it properly. With practiced caution, he entered silently, conducting a room-by-room sweep. The invasion had been professional and thorough. Every drawer opened, papers scattered, electronics disrupted. His home office had received particular attention, the hidden lockbox behind his military shadow box jimmied open client files missing. Most concerning was the laptop containing his preliminary investigation notes now gone. In the master bedroom, Tanya's jewelry box had been emptied, family photos smashed, and racial slurs spray-painted across the closet mirror. The message was unmistakable. Nothing was sacred, nothing was safe. Marcus documented everything, careful not to disturb potential evidence. Though he doubted local police would take meaningful action, establishing an official record remained important for later legal proceedings. While completing his assessment, Marcus's phone rang. It was Principal Winters from Tanya's school. "Mr. Jackson, I'm calling about some concerning developments regarding your wife's teaching position." Her voice sounded strained, uncomfortable. "We've received multiple complaints about Mrs. Jackson's classroom conduct and teaching methods." Marcus controlled his tone carefully. "My wife has an exemplary teaching record spanning 15 years. What specific complaints?" The principal hesitated. "Allegations of favoring certain students, inappropriate discussion topics, unprofessional conduct, anonymous complaints, but numerous enough to require administrative review. I'm afraid Tanya is suspended pending investigation." Before Marcus could respond, another call came through from Jamal. He quickly thanked Principal Winters and switched lines. Dad Jamal's voice sounded shaken. "4 guys jumped me outside the hotel when I went to get breakfast from the lobby. They said our family doesn't belong here and next time would be worse." Marcus immediately returned to the hotel, finding Jamal with a split lip and bruised ribs. Despite hotel security cameras clearly showing the attack, local police officers treated the incident dismissively. "Looks like typical teenage roughhousing to me," Officer Daniels commented, barely glancing at the footage. "Boys will be boys." When Marcus pressed the issue, mentioning the break-in at their home and the attack on Tanya, the officer's demeanor cooled further. "Maybe you folks should consider if this neighborhood is the right fit for your family. Some communities are just more suitable for certain people, if you understand my meaning." The implication hung in the air, blatant and unchallenged. That evening, after ensuring Tanya and Jamal were secure with additional protection, Marcus decided to confront the situation more directly. He located Calvin Weber at the Sandpiper, a bar frequented by local contractors. Weber sat with Dawson and Miller celebrating something with expensive whiskey and loud laughter. Marcus took the stool directly beside Weber, ordering water with deliberate calm. "Enjoying your evening, Mr. Weber?" For a moment, confusion crossed Weber's face before recognition dawned. "Well, look who at Island. The hero returns." His words slurred slightly with alcohol. "Come to negotiate. Terms of surrender," Marcus maintained. Perfect composure, his voice conversational, despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. "I know about Harrington's development scheme. The targeted harassment of minority homeowners. The corrupt permits. The kickbacks to Commissioner Simmons. The fraudulent property acquisitions." Weber's smug expression faltered momentarily before recovering. "Big claims require big evidence, Mr. Navy SEAL. Evidence has a way of disappearing along with troublemakers." He leaned closer, alcohol emboldening him. "Your kind doesn't belong in Palmetto Shores. Never did. This community has standards." Dawson and Miller moved to flank Marcus, creating physical pressure. Weber continued, voice lowered but intense. Your wife took a small lesson yesterday. Next time, she won't get up so easily. And your boy. Lots of accidents happen to teenagers. Swimming pools, car troubles, mistaken drug raids. The naked threat against his family burned through Marcus's control. For a fraction of a second, his combat instincts nearly overrode his strategic restraint. Weber, recognizing the dangerous shift in Marcus's demeanor, smiled with cruel satisfaction. There at Island, the famous SEAL discipline slipping. What would happen to your family if you ended up arrested for assault? Who would protect them then? The calculation was precise, targeting Marcus's greatest vulnerability. With supreme effort, Marcus maintained his composure, finishing his water before standing. You made 3 critical mistakes, Weber. First, you targeted my family. Second, you assumed I came back without a plan. Third, you believe you're the most dangerous man in this equation. He placed a $20 bill on the bar. Enjoy your celebration while it lasts. Weber's laughter followed him outside, though Marcus noted how Dawson and Miller seemed less confident than their leader. The following morning brought new escalations. Their home had been vandalized overnight, racial slurs spray-painted across the garage door and front walkway. Official-looking violation notices plastered every window, each citing fabricated infractions, with mounting fines now totaling over $20,000. Neighbors openly photographed the damage, nodding in apparent satisfaction. Throughout the day, the family received constant calls about noise complaints, improper garbage disposal, unauthorized vehicles, and numerous other fictitious violations. By afternoon, a local news van parked across the street, a reporter doing a live segment about neighborhood disputes, disrupting an upscale community. The camera lingered on the Jackson home, while carefully avoiding showing the racist graffiti. Online, Marcus discovered his military service records had been leaked on community forums, altered to suggest dishonorable incidents and disciplinary problems. Fabricated complaints appeared on his security consulting business review sites, tanking his professional reputation overnight. The pressure extended to every aspect of their lives. Tanya's emotional resilience, normally unshakable, began showing cracks as she absorbed repeated blows to her professional reputation and personal dignity. Maybe we should consider moving, she suggested that night, her voice uncharacteristically small. For Jamal's sake, if nothing else. The doubt cut Marcus deeply. If Tanya, the family's emotional cornerstone, was wavering, the situation had truly reached crisis point. Jamal overheard and erupted in teenage indignation. So they win. We just run away because we're black in the wrong neighborhood, Tanya flinched at her son's anger. It's not about running, it's about safety. Your safety. It's about standing up for ourselves, Jamal countered. Dad taught me we don't back down from bullies. What was that all for if we just give up our home? Marcus intervened before the family fracture could widen. Nobody's decided anything yet. We have options beyond fight or flight. He gathered them close away from possible surveillance. We're not alone in this fight, and I'm not finished investigating. But as he held his family, Marcus recognized the tactical reality. Their opponents were escalating with coordinated precision, attacking simultaneously on multiple fronts. The psychological warfare was expertly designed to break their resolve through accumulated pressure rather than a single overwhelming blow. Divide and isolate. Create internal conflict. Eliminate support systems. Basic strategies Marcus had both employed and defended against in military operations, now being used against his family in suburban America. The familiar battle rhythm settled into his consciousness. Their opponents believed they were facing a single Navy SEAL protecting his family. They had miscalculated significantly. They were actually facing a strategist who understood exactly how to turn their own operation against them. The time for purely defensive measures had ended. They can't be targeting only us, Tanya observed the next morning as she scrolled through property records Marcus had gathered. There must be others fighting back. Her insight catalyzed Marcus's next strategic move. Using property sales data, demographic information, and community records, he identified 7 minority families who had sold homes in Palmetto Shores and adjacent developments within the past year. All transactions showed the same suspicious patterns: rapid sales below market values, purchases by shell companies. Through discreet inquiries and leveraging contacts from Tanya's teaching network, Marcus located 5 of these families, still living in the broader metropolitan area. His approach was careful, establishing trust before revealing his purpose. The Rodriguez family had relocated to an apartment 40 minutes away after selling their Palmetto Shores home of 12 years at a 30% loss. The Chens had moved in with relatives after plumbing issues mysteriously destroyed their home's foundation. The Okonkwo's had left after repeated vandalism that police categorized as teenage pranks. The Ahmeds had departed following anonymous complaints to the husband's employer that threatened his security clearance. The Washington family had fled after their kindergartner was inexplicably dropped from school enrollment with no explanation. Marcus arranged a secure meeting at a community center in a neutral neighborhood, employing counter-surveillance measures to ensure the gathering remained undetected. One by one, the families arrived, initially wary, but increasingly animated as they recognized shared experiences. They slapped violation notices on our door daily. Elena Rodriguez explained, her husband Carlos nodding beside her. Different handwriting each time, but always the same message: you don't belong here. Our cars were keyed repeatedly, James Washington added. Security cameras mysteriously malfunctioned each time. Someone reported me to my licensing board, Dr. Fatima Ahmed said quietly. Claimed I was selling prescription medications. The investigation found nothing, but my reputation suffered irreparable damage. As stories flowed, Marcus documented patterns, identifying Weber's tactics and community enablers. The shared experiences created immediate bonds among the families, isolation giving way to collective resolve. Our daughter attempted suicide, Carlos Rodriguez revealed, voice-breaking. The bullying at school, the constant feeling of being unwanted, the loss of her friends when we moved, it became too much. She's recovering now, but the damage. His words trailed into painful silence. Tanya embraced Elena Rodriguez's teacher's instincts, engaging. We're fighting back, she assured them. Not just for ourselves, but for every family driven out. Marcus outlined his findings about the development scheme, the corruption, the systematic targeting of minority homeowners. What they're doing isn't just immoral, it's illegal on multiple levels. Housing discrimination fraud, conspiracy assault, corruption of public officials. We complained to authorities, Adiola Okonkwo pointed out. Police, county commissioners, even the FBI's Civil Rights Division. Nothing happened. That's because we were fighting individually, Marcus explained. Isolated complaints can be dismissed or buried. Collective action with comprehensive evidence is harder to ignore. He proposed forming a coalition to gather evidence, share resources, and build a case too substantial to dismiss. Each family offered unique skills and connections. Dr. Ahmed's hospital administrative access, James Washington's IT expertise, Carlos Rodriguez's construction industry, knowledge, Michael Chen's banking background, and the Okonkwo's legal connections through their daughter. In law school. By midnight, Operation Restoration had formed its mission. Clear, document the discrimination, expose the corruption, and hold perpetrators accountable. Marcus provided basic counter-surveillance training, teaching families to recognize and document harassment patterns without endangering themselves. Secure communication channels were established, evidence centralized in encrypted storage. Sophia Chen, the investigative journalist Marcus had contacted earlier, joined their final planning session. This pattern extends beyond Palmetto Shores, she confirmed, sharing research files. I've tracked similar operations across 3 counties, all tied to Harrington developments. They target diverse communities adjacent to waterfront properties, drive out minority residents, consolidate land parcels, then develop luxury enclaves with restricted access. Her investigation had stalled due to limited resources and intimidation of sources, but the coalition's evidence reignited possibilities. With enough documentation, I can publish a comprehensive exposé. My editor's already interested. Together, they implemented Marcus's strategy. Hidden cameras were discreetly installed throughout the neighborhood, documenting harassment incidents and community meetings. Financial records were carefully traced through regulatory filings. Building permit processes were scrutinized for irregularities. Each coalition member became intelligence gatherers, meticulously documenting every interaction, threat, and incident. Their careful operation proceeded undetected for 3 days, until Weber's team identified unusual activity patterns. The coalition's first casualty came when the Washingtons' temporary apartment mysteriously caught fire overnight. Though the family escaped unharmed, The warning was unmistakable. Pressure on the Jacksons intensified simultaneously. Tanya received formal notification of her teaching contract termination due to budget constraints, despite the school year being mid-session. Jamal found his college application portal hacked, recommendations deleted, and falsified disciplinary records inserted. Marcus lost 3 security consulting contracts after clients received anonymous background information questioning his reliability. The coalition responded by accelerating their timeline, recognizing the escalating risk. Sophia Chen prepared preliminary reporting while evidence compilation continued. Marcus implemented additional security protocols, rotating safe houses, and communication methods to protect coalition members. Despite mounting pressure, the shared purpose strengthened their resolve. These families had already lost homes, faced humiliation, and endured threats. The opportunity to reclaim dignity and expose injustice outweighed growing risks. During this intense period, Marcus remained publicly visible in Palmetto Shores, projecting vulnerability while carefully monitoring reactions. The strategic deception worked. Weber's team, believing their tactics were succeeding, began preparing for what they assumed would be the Jackson family's imminent capitulation. What would you do if faced with systematic racism and corruption in your own community? Comment number 1, if you'd gather evidence and fight back like these families, or number 2, if you'd protect your family by relocating. Like and subscribe for more stories about standing up against discrimination. The coalition had gathered substantial evidence, but would it be enough to bring down Harrington's powerful network? And with the harassment escalating, could Marcus protect all these families while executing his master plan? The most dangerous phase was about to begin. The vulnerability Marcus projected publicly began yielding results by the 7th day of coalition operations. Weber's surveillance team reported visibly increased stress in the Jackson family, evidenced by heated arguments visible through windows and Tanya's tearful phone conversations on their back patio. Marcus had staged these performances meticulously, knowing they were being watched. The final component involved Marcus apparently drinking heavily at the Sandpiper, loudly lamenting his family's circumstances within earshot of Weber's associates. "Can't fight the whole damn system," he slurred to the bartender, who happened to be a coalition member's cousin. "Maybe Tanya's right. Just sell and go somewhere we're actually wanted." The information traveled through predictable channels. Within 24 hours, a real estate agent called with an interested buyer willing to make a generous offer considering the circumstances. The proposed purchase price was 40% below market value, with an all-cash 7-day closing time frame. Marcus expressed reluctance but agreed to meet with representatives to discuss terms. The trap was baited. While these overtures progressed, coalition members finalized evidence compilation. Sophia Chen verified documentation of 37 separate incidents of housing discrimination targeting minority homeowners. Financial analysts within the coalition traced money flows from shell companies to Harrington Developments and kickbacks to Commissioner Simmons. Building permits revealed environmental regulation exemptions granted without required studies. Most damning were recorded conversations of Weber's team explicitly discussing racial targeting strategies. The coalition had constructed an airtight case, revealing systematic discrimination, fraud, corruption, and criminal conspiracy. Marcus scheduled the property negotiation meeting at his home, insisting principal decision-makers attend rather than intermediaries. His conditions were specific evening time frame, minimal attendees, no attorneys present for initial discussions. Weber insisted on attending for security purposes, despite Marcus's objections. The coalition prepared meticulously. Hidden cameras with remote monitoring capabilities were installed throughout the house. Microphones captured audio from multiple angles. Coalition members stationed in nearby homes maintained surveillance of surrounding streets. Sophia Chen positioned herself with a photographer 3 houses away. Marcus's former SEAL teammates provided perimeter security, invisibly blending into the neighborhood landscape. Tanya and Jamal relocated to a secure location 2 hours before the scheduled meeting, though ostensibly they were simply grocery shopping. At precisely 7 o'clock, 3 vehicles arrived. Richard Harrington emerged from a luxury sedan, his confident bearing, suggesting complete assurance in the outcome. Weber and his 2 associates exited an SUV, scanning the surroundings with professional vigilance. County Commissioner Walter Simmons arrived last, his presence confirming the operation's official protection. Marcus greeted them with deliberate humility, ushering the group into his living room, where refreshments waited. "Appreciate you considering our situation," he began, portraying the defeated homeowner. "Recent events have been challenging for my family." Harrington smiled with practiced sympathy. "Unfortunate misunderstandings occur in every community, Mr. Jackson. We're simply offering a practical solution that benefits everyone." The conversation proceeded cautiously at first, with veiled references to neighborhood compatibility and community standards. Marcus purposely stalled, asking detailed questions about the proposed transaction while recording every response. Gradually, Harrington's impatience surfaced. "Let's be direct, Mr. Jackson. Your family's presence has created tension in Palmetto Shores. This generous offer represents an opportunity to relocate somewhere more suitable." Commissioner Simmons interjected with faux concern. "My office has received numerous complaints about your property. While I've delayed official action out of compassion, certain regulatory processes are becoming unavoidable." Marcus feigned resignation, encouraging further revelations. "So we're being pushed out because we're black. Why not just say it directly?" The question hung provocatively in the air. Weber snorted derisively. "Don't play the race card. This is about property values and community standards." Harrington, loosened by apparent victory, became increasingly explicit. "Palmetto Shores has a certain character we're committed to maintaining. Our development vision involves a cohesive community with shared values and aesthetics." He spread architectural renderings across the coffee table. "Once we've consolidated these properties, we'll create an exclusive waterfront enclave with significantly increased valuations." Commissioner Simmons nodded enthusiastically. "The economic benefits for existing residents are substantial. Those who understand our vision have been amply rewarded for their cooperation." As the conversation progressed, their statements became increasingly incriminating. Harrington detailed how minority homeowners had been systematically targeted for removal. Simmons explained permit fast-tracking in exchange for development considerations. Weber described intimidation strategies with disturbing pride. Marcus maintained his defeated facade while guiding the conversation toward explicit admissions. After 40 minutes of damning revelations, Marcus finally shifted tactics. "I appreciate your transparency, gentlemen. Unfortunately, I've decided not to sell." The statement landed like a grenade in the room. Harrington's expression hardened instantly. "I strongly advise reconsidering, Mr. Jackson. This offer expires tonight. Future discussions would be considerably less favorable." "No further discussion is necessary," Marcus replied calmly. "My family is staying in our home." Tension thickened the air as Harrington exchanged glances with Weber. Commissioner Simmons began gathering his belongings. "This is disappointing. I had hoped for a reasonable resolution." Marcus remained seated, outwardly calm, despite the palpable threat emanating from Weber, whose hand had drifted toward his jacket. Harrington signaled subtly to the commissioner. "Perhaps Walter and I should continue this conversation elsewhere, while Mr. Weber discusses security implications with Mr. Jackson." The commissioner hastily departed with Harrington. The front door had barely closed when Weber's demeanor transformed. "You stupid son of a bitch," he snarled, all pretense abandoned. "We tried doing this the easy way." From outside came the distant wail of police sirens, apparently responding to an emergency several blocks away. One of the coalition members had placed the call according to plan, creating approaching authority presence without direct intervention. Harrington and Simmons hurriedly entered their vehicles and departed, unwilling to be present for whatever happened next. Weber, now alone with his 2 associates, pulled a handgun from his jacket. "Last chance, Jackson. Sign the papers or things get permanently unpleasant for your family." Marcus assessed the tactical situation with combat clarity. 3 armed opponents confined Space Coalition members, monitoring remotely, everything recording. Weber approached, weapon raised, and struck Marcus violently across the temple with the pistol. "That's for making us work overtime." Blood immediately flowed from the wound. Marcus allowed himself to fall, maintaining the vulnerable appearance. "The papers are in my office," he managed, gesturing down the hallway. Weber nodded to his associates. "Watch him. I'll get everything ready for his signature." one way or another. As Weber disappeared down the hallway, Marcus knew the trap had succeeded beyond expectations. The entire criminal conspiracy had been documented with explicit threats, and assault now included. Every incriminating word and action had been captured from multiple angles, transmitted to secure servers beyond their reach. The justice phase of Operation Restoration could now begin. Blood trickled into Marcus's eye from the pistol whip wound, as Weber's associates loomed over him, their expressions reflecting the sadistic pleasure of men accustomed to inflicting pain with impunity. Through the window, Marcus noticed flashing police lights approaching the coalition's emergency call, drawing response faster than anticipated. Weber returned from the office, papers in hand, his frustration evident at finding nothing of value in his quick search. "Sign these transfer documents now, or your family becomes collateral damage," Weber demanded, thrusting the papers toward Marcus. Calculated risk assessment had always been Marcus's specialty during SEAL operations. Now, evaluating his opponent's positions, the approaching police and the recording systems capturing everything, he made his decision. "No," he stated, simply rising to his feet despite the gun aimed at his chest. Weber's face contorted with rage. "Your choice, hero." The sound of police vehicles pulling up outside shifted the dynamic instantly. Weber lowered his weapon but maintained his threatening stance. "Thompson, handle this," he instructed one associate, who immediately moved toward the front door. Marcus recognized the practiced coordination of men who had manipulated law enforcement before. The approaching officer's voice carried through the open window. Palmetto Shores PD responding to a disturbance call. Officer William Hayes entered cautiously, hand resting on his holstered weapon. His expression shifted from professional alertness to recognition as he surveyed the scene. "Everything under control, Calvin." The casual familiarity confirmed Marcus's intelligence about corruption within local law enforcement. Weber nodded, gesturing toward Marcus. "Domestic disturbance. Homeowner became violent when discussing property violations. Had to restrain him for our safety." Officer Hayes approached Marcus, taking in the blood on his face and the disordered room with experienced indifference. "Mr. Jackson, turn around and place your hands behind your back." The practiced ease of the fabrication demonstrated how frequently this scenario had played out against other victims. Weber smirked as Hayes produced handcuffs. "Sir, you're under arrest for assault and disorderly conduct." Within minutes, neighbors gathered outside, summoned by Weber's associates. Their rehearsed statements began immediately, multiple voices claiming to have witnessed Marcus behaving erratically, threatening Weber's team. "He's been unstable for weeks," Mrs. Wilson declared loudly. "Always causing problems. Threatened several residents," Mr. Thompson added from his perfectly manicured lawn. "Should never have moved here." The coordinated character assassination continued as Hayes secured the handcuffs. Marcus offered no resistance, understanding that this performance formed the final documentation needed. As Hayes recited Miranda rights, Weber approached closely, whispering into Marcus's ear. "Once you're processed, we'll pay a visit to your lovely wife and son. By morning, you'll have neither a family nor a home." Welcome to Palmetto Shores, Justice Boy. The racial slur triggered something primal in Marcus's training. 15 years of disciplined combat experience, thousands of hours of specialized close quarters, battle training, and the instinctive drive to protect his family converged in crystallized clarity. His SEAL instructors had drilled one principle relentlessly: when conventional options fail, create tactical advantage through unexpected action. Marcus's body responded with muscle memory, honed through countless combat situations. Despite the handcuffs, his precise movement disrupted Hayes's balance, creating momentary space between them. In the same fluid motion, he pivoted, bringing his restrained hands into position. With specialized technique, Marcus dislocated his own thumb, allowing his right hand to slip free from the restraint. Hayes reached for his weapon, but Marcus moved with combat velocity, neutralizing the threat with a precision strike to pressure points that rendered Hayes momentarily immobilized without causing permanent injury. Weber and his associates reacted instantly, all three attacking simultaneously. Their security contractor training was evident in their coordinated approach, but against Marcus's specialized capabilities, they faced overwhelming disadvantage. Marcus's movements demonstrated why Navy SEALs represented the pinnacle of close-quarters combat expertise. Each action served multiple functions, defensive protection, positional advantage, and measured counterattack. Weber lunged with his pistol, attempting to strike Marcus again. Marcus redirected the weapon, applying specific joint manipulation that collapsed Weber's arm structure. The gun clattered to the floor as Weber howled in pain, his wrist and elbow hyperextended beyond natural range. Dawson attacked from the left, swinging a telescoping baton toward Marcus's head. Marcus slipped the strike by millimeters, entering Dawson's vulnerable space. 3 precision strikes to neural clusters along Dawson's torso shut down his voluntary muscle control, dropping him to the floor in paralyzed discomfort. Miller presented the greatest immediate threat, producing a concealed knife with practiced speed. His slashing attack demonstrated tactical training, but Marcus had faced superior opponents in actual combat. Evading the blade's arc, Marcus applied a complex counter that used Miller's momentum against him. The resulting takedown drove Miller face first into the hardwood floor, with sufficient force to render him instantly unconscious. Hayes recovered enough to draw his weapon, creating an armed standoff. "Freeze or I'll shoot," the officer shouted, weapon trained on Marcus's chest. The potential escalation to lethal force crystallized the situation's danger. However, before either man could act, new voices entered the confrontation. "Police, everyone down. Weapons down now." State police officers flooded through the front door, weapons drawn, tactical formation, indicating specialized training. Behind them came Tanya, accompanied by coalition members, and Sophia Chen, all recording the scene from multiple angles. Additional officers secured Weber and his associates, while a state police captain approached Hayes. "Officer Hayes, lower your weapon immediately. You're interfering with a state-level investigation." Hayes hesitated, confusion evident. "This is Palmetto Shores jurisdiction. I'm responding to an assault call." State Police Lieutenant Garcia stepped forward, authority unmistakable in her bearing. "This property is currently under state jurisdiction due to an ongoing public corruption investigation. Your presence was anticipated and has been documented. Lower your weapon now or face obstruction charges." Faced with overwhelming tactical disadvantage, Hayes complied reluctantly. The scene transformed rapidly as state police established control. Emergency medical technicians treated Marcus's head wound, while evidence technicians documented the scene. Weber, Dawson, and Miller received medical attention before being secured in separate vehicles. Officer Hayes found himself similarly detained pending investigation. The neighbors who had gathered to provide false testimony suddenly dispersed, disappearing into their homes as additional law enforcement vehicles arrived. Marcus embraced Tanya as the immediate threat subsided. "Perfect timing," he murmured into her hair. "How did you coordinate the state police response?" Tanya smiled with satisfaction. "Your coalition strategy worked perfectly. Sophia's editor has connections with the Attorney General's office. Once we presented the preliminary evidence package, they fast-tracked everything." Lieutenant Garcia approached them. "Mr. and Mrs. Jackson, we need your official statements. The recording systems documented everything, but your personal testimony remains essential." As Marcus provided his detailed account, he observed Weber being processed into a state police vehicle, the once intimidating enforcer now reduced to a handcuffed suspect. The confrontation had reached its inevitable conclusion, though Marcus understood that the greater battle for justice had only begun. Systemic corruption required systematic dismantling, beginning with this night's evidence but extending far beyond a single neighborhood's discrimination scheme. 6 months passed before the full impact of what the media dubbed the Palmetto Shores conspiracy reached resolution. Marcus Jackson stood at the podium in the state capitol building, adjusting his tie as cameras flashed around him. Behind him sat Governor Williams' Attorney General Patel and representatives from the U.S. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Tanya squeezed his hand reassuringly before he began his testimony to the Special Legislative Committee on Housing Discrimination. "What happened to my family and others in Palmetto Shores wasn't an isolated incident," Marcus stated, his deep voice carrying throughout the chamber. "It represented systematic exploitation of housing discrimination for profit enabled by corruption at multiple levels of government and private enterprise." The investigation had expanded dramatically from those initial recordings in the Jackson home. State police and FBI investigators uncovered similar operations across 5 counties, all connected to Harrington developments. The pattern remained consistent: target minority homeowners with harassment and intimidation force. Below-market sales, consolidate properties for luxury developments with restrictive covenants, effectively preventing diversity. The criminal consequences had been substantial. Richard Harrington faced 37 federal charges, including racketeering, housing, discrimination, fraud, and conspiracy. His financial empire had collapsed under regulatory scrutiny, with assets frozen pending restitution to victims. Commissioner Walter Simmons and 3 other county officials had accepted plea agreements providing testimony against larger corruption networks in exchange for reduced sentences. Their detailed confessions exposed decades of discriminatory housing practices disguised as community standards and property value protection. Officer William Hayes and 11 other local police officers faced charges ranging from official misconduct to civil rights violations. Their systematic protection of discriminatory practices had enabled years of unchecked abuses against minority residents. Calvin Weber received the harshest sentence among the enforcers: 25 years for multiple felonies, including assault, intimidation, fraud, and weapons charges. His extensive criminal history and explicit racial motivations triggered enhanced penalties under hate crime statutes. The legislative response proved equally significant. The Jackson Housing Protection Act's comprehensive anti-discrimination legislation named for the family that exposed the conspiracy established new enforcement mechanisms, whistleblower protections, and severe penalties for housing discrimination schemes. "Today, I'm not just representing my family," Marcus continued in his testimony. "I speak for every family who faced discrimination with nowhere to turn, for every child who wondered why neighbors viewed them with suspicion, for every qualified buyer steered away from certain communities, for every homeowner pressured to sell because of their race." Tanya had experienced her own vindication. Reinstated to her teaching position with full back pay and a formal apology, she now served as the district's first diversity and inclusion coordinator, developing programs to foster genuine community integration. The coalition families received both justice and restoration. A landmark class action lawsuit against Harrington Developments, the Palmetto Shores HOA, and involved financial institutions resulted in substantial settlements. Beyond financial compensation, the case established new precedent for prosecuting sophisticated discrimination schemes hidden behind seemingly legitimate business practices. Most coalition members chose to return to Palmetto Shores, reclaiming their rightful places in the community, with legal protections, ensuring against future harassment. The Rodriguez family's daughter, who had attempted suicide during their ordeal, now led a youth advocacy program supporting teenagers affected by housing discrimination and displacement. The neighborhood itself underwent remarkable transformation. With corrupt leadership removed and discriminatory practices exposed, genuine integration began taking root. Former antagonists, many of whom claimed they had been manipulated by Harrington's propaganda about property values, cautiously extended olive branches to their minority neighbors. Community events gradually became truly inclusive rather than exclusionary. The Jackson family had faced the difficult decision of whether to remain in Palmetto Shores after everything they'd experienced. Despite attractive offers elsewhere, they chose to stay, recognizing the importance of visible representation in changing community dynamics. "Leaving would have reinforced the very outcome our opponents sought," Marcus explained to journalists. "Sometimes justice requires not just exposing wrongdoing, but remaining present to ensure lasting change." Jamal, now preparing to attend Massachusetts Institute of Technology on a full engineering scholarship, had discovered unexpected purpose through the ordeal. His innovative security systems developed to protect coalition families during the investigation had attracted attention from technology firms specializing in anti-discrimination monitoring tools. His summer internship had already resulted in 2 patent applications. On a warm Saturday afternoon, 6 months to the day after the confrontation that exposed the conspiracy, the Jacksons hosted a neighborhood barbecue in their backyard. Families of various ethnicities mingled comfortably, children played together on the lawn, and conversation flowed without the underlying tension that had previously defined community interactions. Marcus watched from the grill as Tanya laughed with Elena Rodriguez and Sarah Wilson, the neighbor who had once turned her back when Tanya was assaulted. Nearby, Jamal demonstrated a robotics project to an enthusiastic group of younger children from diverse backgrounds. "Quite a change from last year," commented James Washington, handing Marcus a cold drink. "Sometimes I still can't believe how completely things turned around." Marcus nodded, surveying the gathered community. Change never comes easily, but when people of conscience stand together, systems built on discrimination eventually fall. The conversation paused as the newly elected city council member arrived slightly late due to a budget meeting. Neighbors greeted him warmly, several approaching with questions about community improvements. Marcus smiled as Councilman Jackson, his campaign built on transparency and equal representation, stepped into his newest role, servant leader, for the entire community regardless of race. The battle for justice had transformed not just their lives, but an entire system that had perpetuated discrimination for generations. As Marcus observed his wife, his son, and their transformed community, he recognized that their ordeal had created something precious from something painful, a template for confronting injustice that others could follow. The day's gathering represented more than neighborhood reconciliation. It demonstrated the possibility of genuine community founded on equality, rather than exclusion, on justice, rather than privilege, on courage, rather than complacency. What do you think about Marcus and Tanya's decision to stay in their home rather than move away? Would you have done the same after experiencing such discrimination? Comment below with your thoughts. Don't forget to like this video. If you believe in standing up against injustice, subscribe to our channel for more powerful true stories, and share this video with someone who needs inspiration today. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the Jackson family's fight for justice. Remember, sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply refuse to be driven from where we belong. Until next time, stay strong and keep fighting for what's right. The Jackson family's fight against discrimination reveals powerful truths about justice and courage in modern America. First, systemic racism often hides behind seemingly legitimate structures like HOA regulations, property values, and community standards. These coded terms mask discriminatory practices that persist despite laws against them. Second, isolation is the enemy of justice. When Marcus created a coalition of affected families, their collective voice became too powerful to silence. Individual complaints can be dismissed, united testimony cannot. Third, documentation is crucial. Without evidence, discrimination thrives in shadows. The coalition's meticulous recording of every interaction exposed the truth that authorities couldn't ignore. Fourth, expertise matters. Marcus's military training gave him tactical advantages, but more importantly, his strategic thinking created a comprehensive approach to fighting injustice. Fifth, institutional corruption requires institutional response. By engaging multiple levels of authority from local police to federal agencies, the coalition overcame entrenched local corruption. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, lasting change requires continued presence. The Jacksons' decision to stay in their community after winning their battle transformed victory into lasting change. Sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply refusing to be driven away from where you belong, standing firm as living proof that justice can prevail against even the most entrenched discrimination. What would you have done in Marcus's position? Would you have fought back against discrimination or chosen a different path to protect your family? Comment below with your thoughts on how you'd handle racial intimidation in your own neighborhood. Have you ever witnessed housing discrimination or felt unwelcome somewhere because of your identity? Share your experiences so others know they're not alone. If this story inspired you, hit that like button to help more people discover it. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about everyday heroes standing against injustice. And please share this video with someone who needs to hear that standing up against racism isn't just possible, it's necessary. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the Jackson family's fight for justice. Remember, change happens when brave people refuse to accept discrimination as normal. Until next time, stay strong and keep fighting for what's right in your own communities.